Ma'am, step away from the aircraft. Now.
Excuse me? I'm boarding my flight.
You don't have clearance to be here. This is a restricted area.
I have every right to be here.
Huh. Okay, sure. Turn around. You're being detained for trespassing.
You're making a serious mistake.
We'll see about that. Hands behind your back.
The officer had no idea what he just walked into. The woman he was arresting wasn't trespassing. She was boarding her husband's private jet. Her husband, a tech billionaire with a net worth exceeding $8 billion. She herself sat on the boards of 2 Fortune 500 companies. The entire confrontation was captured on airport security cameras. What started as a 2-minute exchange on the tarmac would spiral into a $22.5 million lawsuit that would force an entire police department to answer one question. How does an innocent woman end up in handcuffs at her own plane? Mistake or pattern? Comment below. Monica Hayes wasn't someone who sought attention. She built her career quietly. She served on corporate boards. She ran a foundation focused on education access. She lived in a world of private terminals and chartered flights, but she never made a show of it. Her husband David founded a cloud infrastructure company in the early 2000s. The company went public. The valuation climbed into the billions, but the couple stayed out of headlines. No reality shows, no social media empires, just work and philanthropy. Monica traveled frequently for board meetings and charity events. She'd been through this particular airport dozens of times. Same routine, same fixed-base operator, same private terminal. The staff knew her, the flight crews knew her. There had never been an issue. On this day, she was flying to Miami for a foundation event. Solo trip, standard schedule. She arrived at the private terminal around 2 in the afternoon. She checked in with the front desk. She walked out to the tarmac where the jet was waiting. Everything was normal until it was. Officer Brandon Keller had been with the airport police department for 6 years. He worked security patrols. He checked credentials. He responded to incidents on airport property. His record showed 3 commendations for vigilance. No major disciplinary actions in his file. On paper, he looked like a standard officer doing a standard job. But there were complaints, informal ones, the kind that don't make it into official records. Airport employees had mentioned his attitude. Private terminal staff said he treated certain passengers differently. Nothing concrete, nothing documented, just a pattern people noticed but didn't report. Keller was on patrol that afternoon when he saw Monica walking toward the jet. He didn't recognize her. He didn't check with the terminal staff. He made an assumption. And that assumption changed everything. The fixed-base operator at this airport handles private and chartered flights. It's a separate terminal, different security protocols. Passengers check in at a private desk. Staff verify flight manifests. Then passengers walk directly to their aircraft. Monica had been through this exact process an hour earlier. She showed her ID at the desk. The staff confirmed her name on the manifest. She waited in the lounge while the crew prepped the jet. When they were ready, she walked out to the tarmac. Keller was patrolling near Hangar 7 when he noticed her. He radioed dispatch. "I have a suspicious individual at Hangar 7. Dispatch asked for details. Keller said a woman was approaching a private aircraft without visible credentials. He was moving to intercept. Monica saw him approaching. She stopped and waited. She assumed this was a routine check, maybe a new officer who didn't know the regulars. It happened sometimes. Keller reached her and spoke first. "Ma'am, you need authorization to be here." Monica stayed calm. She explained she was a passenger on the jet. She showed her driver's license. Keller looked at it and handed it back. "This doesn't prove you have clearance for this aircraft." Monica offered to call the flight crew. They were inside the jet running pre-flight checks. Keller shook his head. "Step away from the aircraft." Monica asked what law she was breaking. Keller's tone shifted. "Trespassing on restricted property. Turn around." That's when everything escalated. Keller pulled out handcuffs. Monica's voice stayed steady, but you could hear the disbelief. "You're making a serious mistake." "We'll see about that," Hands behind your back. Monica complied. She didn't resist. She asked for a supervisor. Keller ignored the request and secured the cuffs. Another officer arrived as backup. Monica repeated her request for a supervisor. Neither officer responded. That's when a crew member stepped off the jet. He saw Monica in handcuffs and froze. Then he pulled out his phone and started recording. The crew member shouted to Keller that Monica was the passenger. Keller told him to step back. The crew member asked if they were seriously detaining the aircraft owner's wife. Keller said he was handling the situation and ordered the crew member to return to the aircraft. Monica was escorted to a patrol vehicle. She wasn't taken to county jail. She was transporting to the airport police secure. IT office, a holding room, windowless, 1 table, 2 chairs. She sat there for over an hour. She asked to contact her attorney. The officer processing her said she'd get her phone call. He took her information. He issued a citation for criminal trespass. Monica stayed calm. She answered questions. She didn't argue. Finally, they let her make a call. She reached David. She explained the situation in a flat, controlled voice. David immediately contacted the aviation company that managed their jet. He confirmed ownership. He confirmed Monica's name on the manifest. The company rep called airport police. The message was clear: you've detained the aircraft owner's wife. 20 minutes later, Monica was released. No apology, no explanation. Just an officer handing back her belongings and telling her she was free to go. By then, the jet had been grounded for hours. The Miami event had started without her. The crew member's recording was already saved to the cloud. If you're watching this and thinking something feels off, hit that subscribe button. We're breaking down stories where the details don't add up. Monica didn't fly that day. She went home. She told David what happened in detail. She was shaken, not just angry, shaken. David contacted the airport police chief the next morning. He sent a formal email requesting an explanation. The chief responded within hours. The email was brief: matter under internal review. That was it. No timeline, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just a holding pattern. Monica's attorney sent a public records request for the bodycam footage and security camera recordings. The department had 30 days to respond. They used all 30 days. Then they asked for an extension. 2 weeks later, the footage arrived. The attorney watched it twice before calling Monica and David. The recordings showed exactly what Monica had described. She was calm. She was cooperative. She offered identification. She asked for a supervisor. None of it mattered. But there was something else, something the attorney flagged immediately. On the bodycam, Keller's voice was clear. After Monica showed her ID, he said something under his breath. The audio was faint, but it was there. "You don't look like you belong here." The attorney isolated that line. He pulled the security camera footage from the same moment. Monica's expression didn't change. She either didn't hear it or chose not to react, but the microphone caught it. The flight crew member's phone video showed the rest. Monica being led away in handcuffs, her posture upright, her face composed, a professional woman treated like a criminal. The attorney compiled the footage. He edited it into a 4-minute sequence. Then he contacted a local news station. The story aired 3 days later. By the end of the week, it had spread to regional outlets. The question was simple: what reasonable suspicion justified this detention? The department stayed silent. What would you have done in Monica's position? Comment below. A week after the story broke, an investigative reporter started digging. She filed her own public records requests. She looked for similar incidents at the same airport. She found 3. All 3 happened within the previous 18 months. 2 involved black passengers at private terminals. 1 involved a Hispanic business executive. All 3 were detained. All 3 were released after their credentials were verified. None were charged. The officer in all 3 cases was Brandon Keller. The reporter reached out to the passengers. 2 agreed to speak on background. They described the same pattern: Keller approaching without cause, Keller questioning their right to be there, Keller escalating when they couldn't immediately prove their status. One passenger said he'd filed a complaint with the airport police. Nothing came of it, no follow-up, no discipline. The reporter found a former airport employee willing to go on record. The employee had worked at the private terminal for 4 years. He quit 6 months before Monica's detention. He said staff knew Keller profiled passengers, they'd talked about it privately, but no one filed formal complaints. There was a culture of not rocking the boat. Keller was a cop. They were civilians. Who would believe them? The reporter published her findings. The headline was direct. Officer involved in high-profile detention has pattern of similar incidents. County commissioners started getting calls. Civil rights organizations demanded an independent investigation. The airport police chief held a press conference. He announced a comprehensive review of detention procedures at private terminals. He did not mention Keller by name. He did not acknowledge the pattern. He said the department took all complaints seriously and was committed to fair treatment. 3 days later, Keller was placed on administrative leave. The story reached national outlets within 2 weeks. Cable news picked it up. Legal analysts weighed in. The question kept coming back, how does this happen? Monica and David stayed mostly quiet during this period. Their attorney advised them not to comment publicly while they decided on next steps, but behind the scenes, they were building a case. 3 months after the incident, they filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. The defendants were Officer Brandon Keller, the Airport Police Department, and the county. The claims were specific: unlawful detention, racial profiling, violation of Fourth Amendment rights. The lawsuit sought $22.5 million in damages, compensatory and punitive. The legal argument was straightforward. Monica had committed no crime. She had broken no law. She had proper authorization to be on that tarmac. Keller had no reasonable suspicion to detain her. The lawsuit also cited the pattern: 3 prior incidents, same officer, no discipline. The argument was that this wasn't just one bad encounter, it was evidence of institutional failure. The county filed a motion to dismiss. They argued Keller had acted within his discretion as a law enforcement officer. They said he had a right to verify credentials in a secure area. The judge denied the motion. The case would move forward. Do you think $22.5 million is justified? Let's debate in the comments. As of now, the case is still in discovery. Depositions are scheduled for the coming months. Keller has not returned to duty. The department hasn't said whether he'll face termination or be allowed to resign quietly. The airport implemented new protocols. Any detention at a fixed-base operator now requires supervisor approval. Officers must contact terminal staff before approaching passengers. The changes are documented in a revised policy manual. 3 other officers who assisted Keller or witnessed the detention were required to complete retraining on bias and constitutional policing. The department framed it as preventive, not disciplinary. Monica testified before the County Oversight Board. She spoke for 12 minutes. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize the experience. She described what happened and why it mattered. She said the hour in that holding room felt longer than any boardroom meeting she'd ever sat through. She said the humiliation wasn't just personal. It was a reminder that no amount of success insulates you from assumptions people make based on how you look. She said the lawsuit wasn't about money, it was about making sure this pattern stopped. She wanted accountability. She wanted the department to admit there was a problem. The board thanked her for her testimony. They took no immediate action. The couple has continued their advocacy work. They've funded legal aid for others who experienced similar treatment but couldn't afford to fight back. They've met with policy groups working on police accountability measures. David gave one interview. He was asked if the lawsuit was worth the stress and publicity. He said yes without hesitation. He said if they didn't push back, nothing would change. and the next person might not have the resources to demand answers. The case could take years to resolve. Settlements in civil rights cases often happen quietly, but this one has already forced changes at the airport. The question is whether those changes are real or just policy theater. Monica spoke publicly once after filing the lawsuit. She chose her words carefully. She said she didn't want to be the face of this issue, but she also couldn't stay silent. She said people asked her why she didn't just let it go. She had the resources to move on. She didn't need the money. Why put herself through a legal battle? Her answer was simple: because silence protects the system that allowed this to happen. She said the officer who detained her probably thought he was doing his job. He probably believed he had a reason, but that's the problem. The reason was a feeling, a hunch, an assumption based on nothing but her presence in a space he didn't think she belonged. She said she thought about the people who don't have high-powered attorneys, the people who get detained and released and told to be grateful they weren't charged, the people who file complaints that disappear into filing cabinets. She said this wasn't about punishing one officer. It was about exposing a system that lets officers like him operate without consequences until someone with resources pushes back. She ended with a question: how many people had been detained by this officer before her? How many complaints were ignored? How many more incidents would have happened if she hadn't fought back? The statement lasted 4 minutes. She didn't take questions. This case sits at the intersection of race, class, and power. Monica had every advantage: wealth, education, connections, legal resources, and she still ended up in handcuffs for doing nothing wrong. That tells you something about how the system works, or doesn't work. The Airport Police Department had a pattern: 3 incidents, same officer, no accountability. It took a federal lawsuit and national media attention to force any response. The new policies sound good on paper: supervisor approval, staff consultation, bias training, but policies only matter if they're enforced, and enforcement requires oversight, real oversight, not press conferences and policy manuals. The officer in this case had commendations. He had a clean file, but staff knew, passengers knew, the complaints just weren't formal enough to matter. That's a system problem. Monica's lawsuit demands punitive damages for a reason. Compensatory damages cover harm. Punitive damages punish misconduct and deter future violations. The argument is that without real consequences, nothing changes. The county wants this case to go away. Settlements let them avoid admitting wrongdoing. They pay money, they promise reforms. The story fades, but the structure that enabled the problem stays intact. Monica and David aren't letting it fade. They're demanding depositions. They're demanding answers. They're making this expensive and public enough that the county has to choose: fight it in court and risk a jury verdict, or settle and admit the problem. Either way, the case has already changed things. Other passengers are coming forward. Other airports are reviewing their policies. The conversation is happening. But conversation without action is just noise. If stories like this matter to you, hit that subscribe button. We're covering the cases that demand accountability. So let me ask you, when does officer discretion become discrimination? When does a routine check become an abuse of power? When does a pattern become policy? Because if we don't demand answers to those questions, then we're waiting for the next Brandon Keller, the next Monica Hayes, and the next $22.5 million lawsuit that could have been prevented. Comment below if you believe officers should face personal liability in cases like this. If stories like this matter, hit that subscribe button. We're going to keep exposing these stories. We're going to keep demanding better. This isn't just about one officer or one passenger. It's about all of us. See you in the next one.